Hi, my name's John. I've had type 1 diabetes for the past 45 years, and I'm an emergency medicine physician in New Hampshire. I created this video series about 6 weeks ago to share my experiences, provide some hints, some support, and hopefully some laughter to folks dealing with diabetes. So, whether you're a patient or a loved one, please enjoy these. Please don't take any medical advice from here without talking to your provider. So, last week was about Camp Joslin, which, if you saw the video, was very near and dear to my heart. I had quite a few questions from friends and family suggesting that I talk a little bit more about camp. So, I've decided to do a bonus video. And today we will discuss life as a camper, one day at a time, and life as a staff member, one day at a time. So please sit back and enjoy this ride. You're going to hear a lot more about Camp Joslin. If you have experiences from Joslin or other camps, please share them. It's always a great discussion, and we love to hear from you. So, as a camper at Camp Joslin, your day started around 6 a.m. A giant bell up at the office would ring. The officer of the day, the staff member in charge for the day, would ring the bell, and that meant it was time to get up. So in the early years, we all went to the lab to provide a urine sample. They were checking for ketones at this time. Nowadays, we don't do that nearly as much, but it was a standard practice. Then we'd head back to our cabins. Now, I missed a spot here. Typically around 5:30 or so, roadrunners and polar bears come through. So roadrunners is some crazy staff member who loved to go running. And he would come through and shake your bed and blow his whistle and wake everybody up to see if anybody wanted to go. If you went, there was a little ceremony at breakfast where you were cheered and applauded. Polar bears was similar. He would come in and shake your bed and blow the whistle and take your blankets off and drive you insane. Then, if you chose to go, you ran down to the beach. You'd roll in the sand, you'd jump in the water, you'd roll in the sand, you'd jump in the water, and then come back to the cabin. Again, an award ceremony at breakfast was sure to follow. I was at camp for numerous years, successfully never did roadrunners or polar bears. Regardless, back to our day. You come back from the lab, you're in your cabin. This is your time to clean because your cabin's going to be inspected for cleanliness and organization. So you made sure your bed was made and everything was picked up. You got ready for the day. Then the nurse would arrive. Our nurses back then, I'm not sure how they're doing it now, but they carried a big toolbox for all of the blood testing supplies. Everybody had their own insulin bottles and syringes. We used a group meter. So you test your blood, find out how your sugar was, look at your orders, work with the nurse or one of the staff members, and adjust your insulin to take your insulin for the day. After that, you had some free time. So we'd go outside, maybe throw a ball around, toss a little football or frisbee, hop on the swing set, depending on your age and your likes, kind of chill until the bell rang for breakfast. Breakfast came, everybody went to the dining hall. Each cabin had their assigned table. We ate with all of our staff members. Our nurse also ate with us, and our first year counselor in training. So the staff members that we're dealing with, every cabin has a senior counselor. It's the eldest and most experienced member in the cabin. Then you have a junior counselor. Then you have a second year counselor in training, or CIT, and a first year CIT. The first year CIT didn't really stay in the cabin, but they always ate with you. So back to breakfast. You were sitting there, your nurse is with you, the first year CIT and the other staff members. They are sprinkled among the kids, so there's a good staff member to camper ratio. And there's scales all over the table. I think each cabin had probably 2 to 3 or maybe even 4 scales, depending on the size of the cabin. You had a meal plan card that the dietitian designed with you and with the provider and with your parents. And based on that meal plan card was how much you would weigh in eggs or how much you would take of cereal or fruit, milk, and all of that. And you would go ahead and eat. Now, if you wanted to do one of these early morning activities, but weren't into running that early in the morning or jumping in the cold lake that early in the morning, Breakfast Club was an option. So Breakfast Club I did do a few times, and that's just me. But essentially what happened with Breakfast Club is you would combine your entire meal into one bowl and eat it. So if you had waffles and peanut butter and eggs and bacon, then you mixed it all together with your milk and ate it. And again, there would certainly be a little celebration if you were crazy enough to do that. So that's how the meal started. And once everyone was served, we would go ahead and eat. Typically, it's a pretty loud time as everyone's chit-chatting and having a good time, thinking about their day and excited about what they're going to do next. After breakfast was done, the dining room would quiet down. We always had a dining hall leader who would go through any issues for the day, any announcements. He would make sure that various cabins were challenging other cabins or staff members to different events. For example, we might challenge the nurses in my cabin to breakfast club tomorrow. We wanted to see if all the nurses would do it. Different things like that, just to make it fun. There was a suggestion box that we would go through, but typically that was at dinner time. Anyone that did road runners, they would get called up. Anyone that did polar bears, and anyone that did breakfast club, and there'd be cheers, and sometimes they had a special song or a chant they would say to make it a little bit more wild and crazy. And all in all, we got settled for the day. So you'd leave from breakfast after we cleaned our tables and wiped everything down. You'd go out and you had some time to yourself. So this was, depending on what your day was, you made sure you were ready. So if you needed sneakers, or if you needed a tennis racket, if you needed swim trunks, whatever it was, you made sure you were all set. And then you had some more free time to yourself. Then the bell would ring for first active. We would all line up at the flagpole and essentially make sure your cabin is all accounted for. We're in a straight line and we're ready to go. The actives would be announced. Each cabin had a cabin representative that they elected to go work with the program director and pick different activities and less activities that we enjoyed. So for example, let's say it was soccer. They would tell us who our staff members were. We would catch up with that staff member, walk down to the soccer field. Typically there was a storage unit at the soccer field, which always had whatever sport materials you needed. Always had blood sugar testing materials and blood sugar treatment materials. Huge soccer field, and we'd play. Whether we were challenging another cabin and playing them or playing with each other, either way, it was designed to be a very active morning. After first active, you came back to the flagpole when the bell rang, and then you would have a snack and go on to less active. So these less actives tended to be, were these cabin wide? It's been a while. I believe these were cabin group less actives. So for example, if we picked boating, my entire cabin, we'd all go boating together. If we picked fishing, comic book reading, arts and crafts, all those things that are just not aerobic at all, to kind of break up your day and give you some fun. After less active, the bell would ring for lunch. So back to your cabin, a nurse would come down with her toolbox, test all the blood sugars. If anyone was taking insulin at lunch, it would be delivered. And then you had some time before lunch. Lunch and breakfast were very similar. A lot of loudness, a lot of hooting and hollering, and a lot of good times. After lunch, you had a little bit of a break, typically about 20 minutes. And then the bell would ring for second and third actives. So second and third actives were back to back. It could be anything from basketball, hockey, soccer, softball, hiking, whatever you can think of, swimming. But you did those back to back. So you may have had basketball for a second active and then hockey for a third active, or tennis or something like that. So you, as a cabin group, you would go and participate in the one active and then go over to the other active. So let's say you have a low blood sugar while you're at an active. It's basketball and you're just not feeling right. Maybe the counselor recognizes it and asks you. Maybe you're aware enough to tell them. They would bring you to the sideline to one of these storage units. In here was all the blood testing supplies needed. They test your blood sugar, and depending on where your blood sugar was, treat the low. We used Coke syrup a lot back in those days, which is essentially concentrated Coke, and extremely good at raising the blood sugar and pretty foul tasting too. So there was no desire to get extra. But you'd have a shot or a half a shot of Coke syrup, sit down for 10 or 15 minutes until you felt able to play. So that's how lows are treated. So second and third active. After third active, the bell would ring and everyone would come back to the line two. After third active, the bell would ring and everyone would report to the waterfront. This was time for general swim. So during general swim, once you checked into the waterfront area, you were free to do what you wanted. You could swim as much as you wanted. Some days you could boat, some days you could fish. You could sit on the beach and just read, whatever you felt like doing. So it wasn't a designed active or inactive, it was sort of a at your leisure. It typically lasts about an hour and was always a lot of fun because you got to do your own thing with your friends. After general swim, we'd have a less active. So everyone typically went back to their cabins, changed, and the bell would ring again. These were individual less active. So this is where each camper would sign up for what they really liked. I did a lot of fishing. I did some arts and crafts. I bounced around a lot, but you would go individually with campers from other cabins and participate in that less active. Then, after less active, it was time to get ready for dinner. So, same regimen. We go back to our cabins, the nurse would come in with all the blood testing supplies, test blood sugars, treat, give insulin as needed, get ready for dinner. Dinner was identical to lunch. Everyone got together, we weighed and measured our food, we ate our meals. There were announcements after the meals. Sometimes we would do the suggestion box. They would do a lot to hype us up for the evening activities. Get everyone excited and on edge. If we had a guest visiting, they would introduce the guest and why they were important. So dinner was a busy time, but a lot of fun. After dinner time, you had a little bit of a break and then evening active. Evening active was a smorgasbord. You had your choice. So they would tell you what the actives were, and you pretty much went where you wanted. So again, good time for you and your friend to do something different together. Go try something brand new, try something you're used to, whatever you liked. On occasion, if you were in I think it was hockey and basketball leagues, they would have planned games, so you had to go to those. But if you weren't in any of that stuff, or if you didn't have a planned game, you had your choice of what active you would go to. After that, everybody returned to their cabin and got ready for the evening program. So evening program is just another less active. We had numerous evening programs. Sometimes they were focused purely on diabetes education. Sometimes we went to Indian Council, which was one of my favorite. Indian Council was an opportunity to meet Native Americans as we walked about halfway around the lake. They'd have a giant fire. They'd be very spectacularly dressed in lots of colors and totem poles and a really cool setup. And they would tell you stories. They would challenge you to do the brave test. Sometimes they had the little kids make clubs. They gave you all kinds of different tasks and challenges because you'd come back and see them at least one or two more times for the camp session. So they always followed up on that stuff. And it was always funny. Of course, this was all of our staff members, or some of our staff members, dressed up, and they just made it fun. So for anyone that's been to Indian Council, you understand what I'm talking about and how much fun it is and goofy and just absolutely crazy, but a huge, huge, huge amount of fun, and the kids just love it every year. I've been participating as a Native American myself. I've been an elderly man at Indian Council before, and I've been a staff member there as well as a camper. Absolute blast every time. Other evening programs, of course, one big one that everyone loves is the dance. So twice a session, we would have a dance with Claire Barton Camp. So either at our camp or there, we would bus or van ourselves over and have a dance with all the girls. So of course, the lower cabins, the younger kids, not nearly as exciting. The older kids certainly were more excited about this. Joslin at the time had its own radio station, so it was very cool. A lot of loud music, a lot of good music, and of course, it was the '80s, so it was the best music ever. But all in all, everyone had a great time with the girls' camp. And every now and then we would do mixed activities with the girls' camp. And I'm sure now, because the girls' camp is financially responsible for Joslin, they do a lot more together. So the two camps are very, very similar and serve a wonderful purpose, but definitely have a lot of fun together and have a lot of fun on their own. Trying to think of some other evening programs that we would do. We'd have a campfire in the beginning of the session, a campfire at the end of the session, a few little ceremonies that we'd go through. Towards the end of the session, you have an awards program. So if you participated in a certain activity a lot, you might get an award for it. Cleanest cabin, stuff like that. All kinds of fun things set up just to be less active. Then we'd go to the dining hall where we'd meet our nurse, test our blood sugars, and have a night snack, take insulin if needed or if it was part of your regimen. Then it was quiet time. So now you're back in your cabin, staff members leave, and you're tired, getting ready to go to bed, but you're also free, and you put 8 or 10 boys together in a cabin at night, they're going to goof around and do silly things, which of course absolutely happened. There's night patrol, which controls the environment at night. It's a group of about 3 staff members that alternate between various stations in the camp, and they walk around through all the cabins, check all the cabins to make sure everybody's present, take care of any low blood sugars or any issues like that. As a camper, if your bunkmate was having a low sugar, you would open the door of your cabin and yell, um, "Night Patrol, Cabin 8." So Night Patrol would know to run to Cabin 8. So there was always somebody up at the infirmary. There was somebody doing patrol, and there was somebody up at the office. So you always had plenty of coverage for the camp, and they would take care of any low sugars as needed. And honestly, they would take care of any issues as needed. Every now and then at night, some strange things would happen. For example, the last Thursday of camp, before parents came and picked you up on Friday. So just to backtrack a bit, parents would drop you off on Sunday and pick you up. In my case, it was a 2-week session, so 2 weeks on a Friday. So that Thursday night, if the fog came in on the lake, which it always did, we would get visited by the Vikings. And the Vikings, again, was a group of wonderfully dressed staff members who would paddle way out into the lake and come in slowly with torches. And they would put on a skit for us at the waterfront. Always fun. Some of the kids would get scared, although not ever designed to be scary. But always a good time and a lot of laughter. And that happened typically around 11 o'clock at night. So it was fun to get the campers up to go to that. And it was fun being a camper going to that. Other than that, your night times are pretty peaceful because you've been working hard all day. You've been learning about diabetes. You've been testing your blood sugar like crazy. You've been running and playing with your friends, doing the activities and the less actives. You were tired. This was a good time to write a letter. This was a good time to maybe look at the package or cards that you were sent from your family, because mail time is always fun. But all in all, we just crash and go to sleep. So that is a day in the life of a camper. Some of the special things that happen for campers, we talked about the dance with the girls camp, always a blast. On Wednesday of the last week, we would have a McDonald's day. So what they did is they would teach us how to make our meal portions appropriate for something like McDonald's. So it was all pre-ordered. You'd get your McDonald's and you'd try to make it match, and you'd learn and work with the dietitian and the staff members. Another great opportunity. And what other special things we do? Sometimes the groups would get together and do a hike up Mount Washington here in New Hampshire. Always a good time. That was an overnight hike, and we all loved it. We'd have trips to Purgatory, which is a series of caves in Massachusetts. Trips to the Boston Children's Museum or the aquarium. They try to do something special with every group, and it's always a good time. We would do I think it was a 2-mile walk for ice cream. A little tiny bit of ice cream, but ice cream nonetheless, which, as you can imagine, is very exciting. Sometimes we'd walk to different beaches. Like I said, sometimes we'd get together for a special day with the Claire Barton camp. But all in all, they do a tremendous job at planning activities, teaching about activities and less activities, and weighing and measuring your food such that you can come out into the real world and have a good idea of what's an appropriate amount to eat. This is, incredibly important. And obviously, as diabetes therapies have changed, it becomes less important, but it's a good skill to have. So our time is huge right now. I apologize for that. I do get passionate about camp. Please stay tuned, like the video, subscribe, give us some comments, tell me about your camp experiences. I did mention doing a day as a staff member. It's not that different, so I'm not going to waste any more time with that. Tomorrow we will visit how something even more special to me works, and it's another therapy for folks with diabetes, although it's a hard-working therapy on both sides. But we'll talk more about that tomorrow. I think he's probably sitting behind me, although I don't think you can see him in the glare. I will share plenty of pictures and plenty of stories. So until then, have a wonderful day. Stay healthy. Please like, subscribe, and comment, and stay strong.